The first sound is a woman's voice, unaccompanied, slow, almost a hum, before it becomes a song. Let me tell you something my mother told me. There is no piano under it yet. There is no orchestra. There is just a single voice in the dark, addressing a small daughter who is not yet a vampire, who is not yet 1,000 years old, who has not yet survived the end of the world, or fallen in love with anyone, or written a song, or lost a stuffed bear, or been raised by a man who would forget her. Everything stays right where you left it. The voice belongs to a character named Elise, who is the mother of Marceline Abadir, and the song is called Everything Stays, and it was written for a mini-series called Stakes, which aired across 4 nights from the 16th to the 19th of November in 2015. It is the first piece of music in this essay because it is the first piece of music in the chronology of one girl's life before the war, before the crown, before the tree fort, before the Ice King, before Princess Bubblegum, before the bass guitar she would later make from her father's battle axe. Just a mother singing a daughter to sleep, telling her that everything will be the same, even when it changes a little, even when it changes a lot, even when nothing in the entire world is the same anymore. The thing the show is asking you to notice when you finally hear that song in context is who is left to remember it. Elise dies. Simon Petrikov, who finds Marceline after the war and protects her from the radioactive ruin of what used to be Earth, eventually loses every memory of her to the cursed crown that turns him into the Ice King. The world that produced the song no longer exists. Brooklyn is gone. The buildings are gone. The grocery stores Simon and child Marceline scavenge through are skeletons. The country that printed the song her mother used to sing has not existed for almost 1,000 years. And so the song persists in exactly one place. It lives inside the mind of Marceline Abadir, who is the only person who can still hear it the way it was first sung, the only person who can still see her mother's face attached to the voice, the only person who carries forward the entire sealed library of a vanished world. That is the actual subject of this video, not Marceline's coolness, not her bass guitar, not her relationship with bubblegum. The thing this video is about is the specific shape of being the last person who remembers, and what that does to a 1,000-year-old girl who has been asked again and again by the show and by her own life to be the only one who knows what was lost. Welcome to Tome. Get comfortable. This one goes deep. Let us get into it. There is a small pink stuffed bear sitting on a high shelf in the home of a witch. Its name is Hambo. It is missing one button eye. It has been stitched back together so many times that you can see the seams running across its body like the contour lines on a topographical map. The witch's name is Maya. The episode is called Sky Witch, Season 5. Episode 29, originally aired on the 29th of July in 2013, and the reason this small pink bear matters is that it is, in the most literal sense, the oldest object in the show. Not the oldest object that has been mentioned, the oldest object whose continuous existence the show has actually traced from before the apocalypse to the present day, on screen through specific scenes, in the hands of a specific child, surviving a specific catastrophe. Hambo predates everything. Hambo predates Hambo predates the Candy Kingdom and the Ice Kingdom and the Lich and the entire candy biome and the magical structure of the world itself. Hambo is the bear that a small girl was holding when civilization collapsed, and it is the same bear with the same stitches that an adult vampire is trying to steal back from a witch 1,000 years later. Think about what that means in practical terms. Marceline is over 1,000 years old. The Adventure Time wiki places her birth date before the Mushroom War, makes her a child during it, and confirms her continuous existence through the Land of Oo's entire formation. Across that span of time, almost everything Marceline ever owned is gone. Her childhood home is gone. Her mother's belongings are gone. Her father has access to her only through periodic, mostly hostile reunions across dimensional barriers. The Brooklyn she walked through as a small girl no longer exists in any recognizable form. There are no photographs of any of it. There is no archive. There is no museum where the pre-war world is preserved for her to visit. Everything from her first decade of life has been dissolved by time, by radiation, by the slow grinding erosion of 1,000 years of weather and growth and decay. Everything except this bear. The bear is the only physical, touchable, holdable proof that her childhood actually happened, and the bear was given to her in the world inside the show by Simon Petrikov. The story of Hambo is told in fragments across multiple episodes, but the moment it becomes a load-bearing object for Marceline's interior life is in Sky Witch. The premise of Sky Witch is almost embarrassingly simple. Marceline shows up at Princess Bubblegum's lab in the middle of the night, vibrating with rage, and tells her that Maya, the witch, has Hambo. Marceline needs to get the bear back. She needs Bubblegum's help. The two of them fly into a wasteland, navigate a series of magical obstacles, and confront the witch. Maya refuses to give the bear back. The witch wants something of equal magical weight, and Marceline does not have anything that qualifies. She tries, she offers items. None of them register on the witch's scale. The bear, it turns out, is so saturated with sentimental energy, so dense with emotional history, that there is nothing in Marceline's possession that comes close to matching it. And then Bubblegum, who has been quiet for most of the negotiation, takes off her own t-shirt. The shirt, it is implied through context and the shape of the scene, is a t-shirt that Marceline gave her, that she has been wearing under her lab coat, that she has been wearing close to her skin, possibly for years. She places the shirt on the witch's scale. The scale tips. The witch hands over the bear. The show does not explain what just happened. It does not put music under it to tell you how to feel. It does not give either character a monologue. Bubblegum puts her lab coat back on over her bare torso, and the two of them leave with the bear, and the credits roll. That is the whole episode. The point of the scene, which the show is trusting you to understand without anyone saying it out loud, is that the only object in the world heavy enough to outweigh a stuffed bear that has lived through the apocalypse is a piece of clothing that has been quietly worn against the body of a person who loves Marceline. The bear and the shirt are weighed against each other, and they balance. The show is making a statement about what counts as memory and what counts as love, and how the two of them are made out of the same material. The bear is what remains of Simon's protection. The shirt is what remains of a relationship Bubblegum has decided to keep close to her skin. Both are forms of carried history. Both are objects that mean nothing to anyone outside the people who know what they are. The witch can use them as currency precisely because she does not understand what they mean. To her, they are just weight. To Marceline and Bubblegum, they are the two ends of one very long sentence about what it means to remember someone. The bear is also the thing that anchors a fact about Marceline that the show keeps returning to without ever stating directly. Marceline does not save herself with magic, with strength, with charm. She saves herself with objects, with songs, with the people she has chosen to keep close. The bear is one such object. The bass guitar she carved from her father's battle axe is another. The little grey rocks she keeps in a box, the specific tape of her mother's voice. Marceline is a vampire, which means by every traditional definition, she should be the kind of immortal who outlives feeling, who hardens, who stops caring, because caring requires a finite frame of reference. But Marceline is not that vampire. Marceline is the vampire who keeps the bear. She is the vampire whose entire emotional architecture is built out of small concrete objects she has refused to let time take. The bear is not nostalgia. The bear is a survival strategy. The bear is the thing she touches to remember that she was once a child whom someone protected, which is the thing she has to remember in order to continue being a person who can be loved at all. And the bear is the entry point to the man who gave it to her. Simon Petrikov, before he was the Ice King, before he was a joke, before he was a flying nuisance who kidnapped princesses for plot reasons. Simon Petrikov, who gave a small girl a stuffed bear in the ruins of Brooklyn, and who was already starting to forget himself by the time he gave it. The bear is the visible tip of a much longer story about a man who is no longer present in his own body, and the small girl who became the only person in the world still capable of remembering who he was. That long story has its first formal articulation in an episode called I Remember You. It is Season 4, Episode 25. It originally aired on the 15th of October in 2012. It is widely regarded by fans, by critics, and by the show's own writing staff as one of the most important episodes Adventure Time ever produced. And the reason it matters is not the song, although the song is what most people remember. The reason it matters is the asymmetry, the fact that one of the people in the room is fully present and the other is not, the fact that one of them remembers everything and the other has lost almost all of it, and that the show is willing to make you sit inside the gap between them for the entire 11 minutes of its runtime, without ever softening it, without ever offering a way out. The premise of I Remember You is that the Ice King flies to Marceline's house in the middle of the night and asks her for help finishing a song. He has written most of it. He needs her to do the rest. He calls her Marceline, but he says it the way you might say a stranger's name that you have been told but cannot quite place. There is no recognition in his face when he sees her. He is not visiting her because he loves her. He is visiting her because, as far as he understands his own life, she is a person he has met a few times and who happens to be musical. He has no idea who she is to him. He has no idea who he was to her. He sits down in her room and starts playing the song he has written, and for most of the episode, Marceline tries to hold a conversation with him on two completely different layers at once. She is talking to her old protector. He is talking to a woman he just met. Neither of them ever exactly meet in the middle. The song that the Ice King has written is called Remember You. The lyrics, which the show treats with extraordinary care, are a desperate plea from a man with deteriorating memory to a person he loves to remember him. Please remember me, please. He does not know who he is asking. He does not know that the person he is begging to remember him is the exact person whose memories of him are the only thing keeping him alive in any meaningful sense. The song is being sung by the wrong direction of love. He thinks he is the one who remembers, and she is the one who forgot. The truth, which the show holds back until the very last beat, is the opposite. He is the one who has forgotten everything. She is the one who remembers all of it. There is a moment about halfway through the song where Marceline starts to cry. She tries to hide it. She is hovering in mid-air. Her eyes are red. Her voice cracks. The Ice King does not notice. He keeps playing. He thinks he is just writing a song with a friend. He thinks he is having a nice evening. He thinks the woman across from him is moved by the music in the way any listener might be moved, in a generic, polite, complimentary way. He has no framework for understanding what is actually happening, because the framework has been removed from his head by the crown. The piece of jewelry sitting on his temples right now, glowing slightly in the candlelight, is the same crown that Simon Petrikov, before he became the Ice King, slowly degraded under for decades while he was protecting a small post-apocalyptic Marceline from the world. The crown has done its work. The man who gave her the bear is still standing in the room with her. He is just no longer inside himself. The way Adventure Time builds the gap between what the Ice King thinks is happening and what is actually happening in I Remember You is one of the most precise pieces of dramatic irony in the medium of television animation. The show does not let either character know what the audience knows. The show does not let the Ice King realize and have a tearful breakthrough. The show does not let Marceline force him to remember. The show simply puts the two of them in a room and lets the difference between their perceptions of the moment exist, unresolved, for the entire runtime of the episode. The Ice King leaves. He flies away. He has had a nice time. He thinks he made some progress on the song. He has no idea that the woman he was visiting just held herself together through what was, for her, one of the most painful encounters of her 1,000-year life. Marceline is left alone in her room with a tape of his voice and a bag of memories she now has to carry by herself again, the way she has been carrying them for almost a millennium. The episode closes on her playing the tape back, hearing his voice, listening to the man she remembers in the body of the man who no longer remembers her. The tape is another object. The tape is another piece of the archive that only Marceline has access to. The show has spent 11 minutes making you understand, in a way that does not require any speech to explain, that the bond between Simon and Marceline did not break. It moved entirely inside her. He used to carry it, now she does. The whole thing, both sides of it. The full weight of a relationship that started in the rubble of a dying city and ended in the slow erasure of one half of the participants, leaving the other half to tend the entire memory by herself, in the quiet of her own room, in the middle of a night that has in some sense, been going on for 1,000 years. There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes from being the only one who remembers. It is not the loneliness of being abandoned. Exactly. The person you remember is still there. They still exist. They walk around. They make jokes. They have not died. They are simply in the part of themselves that mattered to you, no longer accessible. You have to be the entire repository. You have to hold the love from both sides at once. You have to remember your own feelings, and you also have to remember the feelings of the person who used to love you and no longer can, because if you forget those two, then the only proof that they ever existed is gone. That is what Marceline is doing in the final shot of I Remember You. She is performing the basic, exhausting, sacred labor of being the last person in the world who knows what a particular man was like before a particular crown took him. The show is not subtle about what it is doing here. The visual composition of the final shot, the choice to fade out on her listening to the tape, the absence of any other character in the room with her, the specific shape of her shoulders as she sits, all of this is the show telling you, in the language of animation, that you are watching the moment when memory becomes a job. Marceline did not choose this job. The job was assigned to her when the crown took Simon away. She has been doing it ever since. She will do it forever, because vampires do not die of natural causes, and the job does not end as long as she is alive to do it. This is the load-bearing fact of Marceline Abadir's interior life. Everyone she has ever loved either forgets her, or dies, or is changed into a person who is not quite the original version of themselves. Simon forgets. Her mother dies. Her father becomes a demon king with a long, complicated, poorly attended relationship to fatherhood. Bubblegum, the person she eventually finds her way to, is a different kind of immortal, a candy being who can theoretically last as long as Marceline can, but whose own memory of the past is governed by completely different rules, who cannot share the specific, Brooklyn-shaped grief of someone who watched the old world fall. The only person in the world who can fully access Marceline's earliest memories is Marceline. Everyone else gets a curated version, a song, a story, a bear, a description. The original is sealed inside her head, and she is the only librarian. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is an episode that approaches Marceline's memories from the opposite direction, and the way it approaches them is itself a kind of revelation. The episode is called Memory of a Memory. It is Season 3, Episode 3. It originally aired on the 25th of July in 2011. The premise of Memory of a Memory is that Finn and Jake walk inside Marceline's mind, literally, by entering a dream-walking pocket that lets them move through her memories, like rooms in a house. Most of the episode is structured as a chase sequence. They are trying to do something. There is an antagonist named Ash, who is a wizard, who used to be Marceline's boyfriend. The plot is, by the standards of late-period Adventure Time, comparatively thin. The point is not the plot. The point is the architecture. The architecture of the dream-walking section reveals that Marceline's memories are stored as enclosed spaces, rooms, tableaus, frozen scenes. You walk into one, and you are inside a moment from her past, populated by figures of the people who were there, fixed in poses that capture the emotional weight of what happened. The show is making a literal visual claim that Marceline's interior life is a museum, that she has curated her own past into discrete exhibits, that the things she remembers are not a continuous stream of experience, but a series of preserved scenes, each one selected, framed, and kept on display inside her own head. This is not how everyone's memory works inside Adventure Time. The show does not, for example, take Finn or Jake on the same kind of tour through their own memories. The dream-walking gimmick is specific to Marceline. The exhibit room model of memory is hers. What memory of a memory establishes about Marceline, then, is that she has spent some portion of her 1,000-year life building a structure inside her head to hold what she has been through. The structure has rules. The structure has rooms. The structure has, somewhere inside it, things she has decided to lock away. The episode reveals that one of the things she locked away, very deliberately, was a memory involving her ex-boyfriend, Ash. The Adventure Time wiki describes the relationship in detail, and the broad shape of it is that Ash, at some point, betrayed Marceline in a way involving Hambo, the same bear from Sky Witch, and that Marceline made the decision to remove the memory of that betrayal from her active recall. She filed it, she walled it off, she put it in a back room of the museum and stopped going inside. The thing that matters about memory of a memory is not the specific betrayal. The thing that matters is the choice. Marceline is a character who has decided, on at least one occasion that the show has made visible to you, that some memories are not safe to keep at the front of the museum. Some memories she has to put in storage. Some memories she has to hide from herself in order to keep functioning. This is a statement the show is making quietly about the cost of being the asymmetric witness. It is also a statement about her agency. The Crown took Simon's memories without his consent. Marceline's losses have mostly been involuntary. Her mother dying was not her choice. Simon forgetting was not her choice. The world ending was not her choice, but the locking away of the Ash memory was her choice. She can edit her own museum. She can decide what stays in the main gallery and what gets moved to the back. The same 1,000-year-old vampire who has been forced to be the last reader of an enormous library has also very quietly learned to be its curator, to choose what gets read, to choose what gets dust covered, to choose what survives her. The episode ends with Finn and Jake restoring the locked memory, briefly, against Marceline's will, and Marceline being upset about it. She does not give a speech about why. The show does not over-explain. She is just visibly angry that someone went into her museum without her permission and dragged a sealed exhibit out into the light. The plain statement of what happened is this: 2 of her friends entered her interior life without asking, found the exhibit she had specifically chosen to hide, opened it, and then asked her to look at it. The fact that they meant well does not change the violation. The fact that they did not understand what they were doing does not change the violation. The show is letting you understand, without ever saying it, that Marceline's museum has walls for a reason, and that her right to decide which exhibits stay closed is not a small thing. It is 1,000 years of self-protective architecture, and it deserves to be respected. The architecture has a foundation underneath the museum, underneath the rooms. and the locked exhibits, there is one specific stretch of memory that the show has made very plain is the bedrock. It is the time after the world ended, before Marceline could look after herself, when a man named Simon Petrikov walked her through a dead country and tried to keep her alive. That stretch of memory is the focus of an episode called Simon and Marcy, Season 5, Episode 14, originally aired on the 25th of March in 2013. It is the episode that Rebecca Sugar storyboarded last before leaving Adventure Time to create Steven Universe. It is, by a number of measures, the most quietly devastating 11 minutes the show ever produced, and it is the episode that, more than any other, explains why Marceline Abadir has built her entire interior life around the practice of remembering. The episode opens in the present. Marceline and the Ice King are wandering through the woods, doing something inconsequential, and Marceline reaches into her bag and pulls out a can of soup. The Ice King sees the can. Something in the back of his head moves. He starts to hum a tune. The tune is recognizable to anyone who watched American sitcoms in the 1980s. It is the theme song from the bar comedy called Cheers. The theme song that goes, "Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, and they are always glad you came." The Ice King hums it without knowing where it comes from. Marceline's expression changes. The show does not give her a line of dialogue at this moment. It just lets her face change. The episode then cuts away from the present entirely and drops you into a flashback that takes up almost the entire remaining runtime. The flashback is the answer to the question of why a song from a sitcom should produce that particular expression on the face of a vampire in the woods, almost 1,000 years after the show originally aired. The flashback is set in the immediate aftermath of the Mushroom War. Buildings are collapsed, cars are abandoned in the street, the sky has the wrong color, there are mutated creatures wandering through the wreckage, and there is a man named Simon Petrikov before he is the Ice King, walking through the ruins with a small girl named Marceline at his side. She is maybe 7. She is wearing a hooded sweatshirt. She has a stuffed animal. She is hungry. She is scared. And she is following a man who is doing his best to make the end of the world feel survivable to a child. They are looking for food. They are looking for shelter. They are looking for any pocket of the dead world that has not been completely contaminated by the war. The flashback shows you, very methodically, the texture of how the two of them survived. Simon scavenges. Simon makes jokes to keep Marceline from being afraid. Simon distracts her from the worst of what they are walking through. Simon picks her up when she is tired. Simon carries her. Simon, when she is sick, abandons his own search for food in order to find medicine. There is a sequence in the middle of the episode where Marceline is feverish and shaking, and Simon, who is starving, who is being whispered to by the crown, who is feeling the first edges of the magic that will eventually erase him, runs through a collapsed pharmacy looking for a specific bottle of medicine. He finds it. He gives it to her. She drinks it. She does not die. The show treats this scene with no triumph. There is no swelling music. There is just a small child receiving medicine from a starving man in the dark and getting a little bit better. There is another sequence in which the two of them are surrounded by mutants. Simon does not have a weapon. Simon does not have any way to fight. Simon, in the moment of being cornered by hostile creatures with a small girl behind him, takes the crown out of his bag and puts it on his head. He becomes powerful enough to drive the mutants away. He freezes them. He saves both of their lives. And then, as he comes out of the crown's spell, he starts to forget who he is. He starts to forget who Marceline is. The crown gives him exactly the amount of power he needs to protect her, and then it takes a corresponding amount of his memory in payment. The transaction is visible on screen. The crown does not give him anything for free. Every time he uses it, he pays in pieces of himself. Marceline watches this happen. She is small, she is tired, she is scared, and she watches a man she trusts disappear in front of her face, briefly, every time he saves her. The show does not let you look away from her face during these moments. The animation choices, the storyboarding choices, the framing choices, all of them in this episode were made by Rebecca Sugar, and the care she puts into Marceline's expressions during the crown sequences is one of the reasons this episode has the reputation it has. Marceline is not a child who does not understand what is happening. Marceline is a child who understands too much. She watches Simon become someone else and then come back, and she has already started to do the math on what that means. She has already started to learn in real time that the man taking care of her is being slowly eaten by the thing that lets him take care of her. There is a moment in the episode that the show treats as the emotional center of the entire flashback. Simon, in a relatively lucid moment, sits down with Marceline in the wreckage of a building and tries to lift her spirits. He sings. He sings the only song he can remember in that moment. The song is the Cheers theme. The song is from a world that does not exist anymore. The song is about a place where everybody knows your name, sung by a starving man to a small girl in the ruins of a country that has forgotten everyone's name, including its own. Marceline listens. She joins in on the second verse. The two of them sit there together and sing this song from a vanished bar comedy in the dark, in the middle of the apocalypse, and it is one of the most quietly catastrophic uses of pop music in the entire history of animation. The Cheers theme is doing several things at once in that scene, and it deserves to be slowed down. The first thing it is doing is establishing that Simon, even at this stage of his decay, can still access pieces of the world he came from. He still remembers the song. The song still works on him. The song still functions as comfort. The second thing it is doing is establishing that Marceline, who is small and post-apocalyptic, and has likely never been inside a bar in her entire life, has nevertheless learned this song from him. He has taught it to her. He has taught it to her over and over, probably across however many nights they have spent together in the ruins, because it is one of the few pieces of the lost world that he can still hand her. He is teaching her the songs of a country that no longer exists, because those songs are part of the inheritance he wants her to have, and the inheritance is dwindling fast. The third thing it is doing is establishing the mechanism by which Marceline, in the present day, hundreds and hundreds of years later, will reach into her bag, pull out a can of soup, and watch the Ice King hum the same song without knowing why. The song persists. The song moves from Simon's head into hers. The song outlives the bar, outlives the country, outlives Simon's own ability to remember why he knows it, and continues to live in fragments in the place between the two of them. The flashback also includes the moment that gives the episode its specific emotional weight, and the moment that, for many viewers, is the single most quietly devastating beat in all of Adventure Time. Marceline, at one point in the flashback, is sitting alone in the dark, while Simon is having an episode with the crown. He has put it on, he is twitching, he is muttering, he is becoming the Ice King in front of her, and then losing track of where he is, and then drifting back in a cycle she has already learned to wait through. She is not crying, she is not panicking, she is doing what an exhausted child does when the adult in their life is having an episode they have learned to wait through. She is just sitting, and as Simon comes back to himself briefly, he realizes what is happening. He realizes that the crown is about to take him. He realizes that he may not be able to come back the next time. He looks at her, and in the gentlest possible voice, he says, "Hey, Marceline," just that, "Hey, Marceline." He uses her name. He uses it like a man trying to make sure he can still produce it from his mouth. He uses it like a man saying goodbye in a way the child in front of him will not yet recognize as a goodbye. The line is delivered by Tom Kenny, who voices both Simon Petrikov and the Ice King across the entire run of the show, and the technical achievement of using one actor to play both versions of this character, pre-crown and post-crown, lucid and lost, the protector and the kidnapper, is one of the reasons Adventure Time is taken as seriously as it is by people who think about voice acting. Tom Kenny's Simon in this scene sounds like a man who knows he is dying. Tom Kenny's Ice King in the framing scene with the soup can sounds like a man who has no idea anything was ever lost. The two performances are doing the entire thematic work of the episode through nothing but tonal placement of two syllables. Hey Marceline, same name, same voice actor, different person. The show does not let the flashback end on hope. The flashback ends with Marceline, still small, still alone, taking care of a Simon who can no longer remember her name without effort. She tries to comfort him. She tries to get him to talk to her. He is increasingly somewhere else. The crown is winning the long argument, and then the show cuts back to the present. The Ice King in the woods is still humming the Cheers song without knowing where it comes from. Marceline is looking at him. He sees her looking. He asks her if she is okay. She tells him she is fine. She does not explain. She does not tell him what she has just remembered. She does not say, "You used to know me, you used to feed me, you used to sing this song to me to make me feel safe in the dark." She just lets him keep humming. The episode ends. There is a specific kind of grace that comes from deciding not to tell someone what they have lost. Marceline, in the closing seconds of Simon and Marcy, is making that decision. She is the one with the full memory. He is the one who has been freed of it. She could load it back onto him. She could try to make him understand what they were to each other. She does not. She lets him hum the song without knowing it. She lets him be a man in the woods with a friend who is being a little quiet today, instead of a man being told that he used to be someone else, that he used to love her, that he used to walk her through the end of the world. The show is letting you see that her decision to remember alone is also, in part, a kindness. She has decided to spare him. She has decided that the cost of restoring his memory, if it could even be done, would not be paid by him in joy. It would be paid by him in grief over 1,000 years of self-erasure, and she would rather carry the memory than make him pay that bill. That is what the asymmetry actually means. In practice, it does not just mean that one person remembers and the other does not. It means that the person who remembers has to make a continuous, ongoing decision about what to do with the asymmetry, whether to share it, whether to weaponize it, whether to use it to demand recognition, whether to let the other person stay in their easier, smaller, more recent version of themselves. Marceline makes this decision over and over again across the entire run of the show, and almost every time she chooses the same answer. She lets the Ice King be the Ice King. She lets him fly off and kidnap princesses and write his terrible songs and make a fool of himself, and never once forces him to remember that he used to be something else. The closest thing to an exception is I Remember You, where she comes close to confronting him, and even there she pulls back. Even there she finishes the song with him and lets him leave without forcing the recognition. Even there the cost of his lucidity is judged by her to be too high to ask him to pay. This is a load-bearing pattern in Marceline Abadir's character. She is the asymmetric witness, and her response to the asymmetry is almost always mercy. She remembers so that the other person does not have to. She holds the weight of the relationship by herself on the explicit understanding that the other person will be lighter for it. The 1,000-year-old vampire is making a choice every day to be the heavier one, to carry the load alone, to leave the other person in the easier room. Rebecca Sugar storyboarded the episode in which all of this is established. It was the last full episode she storyboarded for Adventure Time before leaving for Steven Universe. The choice to leave a show by drawing the boards for an episode about a man who is about to forget the most important person in his life while a small girl watches him go is itself a kind of statement. Sugar was not telling Adventure Time goodbye through a character. She was telling Adventure Time goodbye through a structure, through an episode whose entire emotional design is about how the people you love sometimes have to walk away in pieces, and how the work of remembering them falls, in the end, to the person who is left in the room. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is another father in Marceline's life, and the show takes much longer to look at him with the same kind of seriousness, but it does eventually look. Hudson Abadir is Marceline's biological father. He is a demon. He rules a dimension called the Nightosphere. He is voiced by an actor named Martin Olsen, who is the real-world adoptive father of Olivia Olsen, who voices Marceline. That casting choice is not incidental. The show went out of its way to put a father and a daughter in real life into the roles of a father and a daughter on screen, and then to use that real-life relationship as the foundation for one of the more complicated parental dynamics in the entire series. The first proper introduction of Hudson is in an episode called It Came from the Nightosphere, Season 2, Episode 1, originally aired on the 11th of October in 2010. It is the season opener. It is the episode that begins the second year of Adventure Time, and it is the episode that establishes for the first time that Marceline is a person with a father, and that the father is a problem. The premise of It Came from the Nightosphere is that Finn, in an attempt to help Marceline accidentally summons her father from his home dimension into the world of Oo. Hudson immediately starts wreaking havoc. He sucks the souls out of candy people. He flies through the kingdom causing damage. He behaves, in short, the way the show has always behaved when it wanted to make demonic mayhem look funny. The episode plays a lot of his arrival as comedy. There are jokes, there are bits. The animation is doing a lot of work to make a soul-eating demon look like a cartoonish dad embarrassing his teenage daughter at the mall. This framing is, to a first approximation, the surface reading of the episode. Marceline is annoyed at her father the way a normal teenager is annoyed at a normal father. The father is over the top the way a sitcom dad is over the top. The show is letting the cosmic horror premise be a vehicle for relatable parental embarrassment. The thing that this surface reading does not account for, and that the episode at its climax forces you to revise, is the song. Marceline, near the end of the episode, sings a song to her father. The song is short. The song is in the show's signature register of being deceptively simple. The song is about a specific incident from Marceline's childhood involving fries. The lyrics, paraphrased so as not to misquote, are essentially asking her father why he ate her French fries when she had specifically asked him not to. The song is very small. The song is about a small thing. The song is about a moment that, on the level of plot, is almost insignificant, and yet the song is being sung by a 1,000-year-old vampire to her demon king father in the middle of a battle for the Candy Kingdom, and the show is treating it as the emotional climax of the entire episode. Hudson hears the song. Hudson stops fighting. Hudson and Marceline have a moment of recognition. The episode resolves around the song. The plain statement of what is happening in the Fries song is this: Marceline's father, at some point in her childhood, did something small and selfish that violated her trust. He took something that was hers. He ignored what she had asked him to do. The incident itself is trivial. The fries are not the point. The fries are the smallest possible representative of an entire pattern of paternal disregard that the show is communicating to you in compressed form through a single song as the easiest possible way to make you understand that Hudson Abadir is not just a demon, he is a father who did not show up properly. The fries are the synecdoche. The fries stand in for everything Marceline asked from him and did not get. The reason the song works as the climax of the episode is that it lets Marceline express, in 3 lines of music, the entire cumulative weight of being parented by a man who has never quite understood that being a father involves not eating his daughter's French fries when she has asked him not to. The Fries song is also, importantly, the first time the show makes you understand that Marceline's relationship to memory is not just about Simon. Marceline carries her father's failure with her too. She remembers the fries. She remembers the request. She remembers the violation. She has been carrying this small, ridiculous, deeply embarrassing piece of evidence for, again, possibly hundreds of years. Hudson is immortal. Marceline is functionally immortal. Their relationship has been going for an enormous span of time. And the thing that Marceline reaches for when she finally gets her father in front of her in a position where he has to listen is an incident with French fries. The smallness of the incident is part of how the show is communicating its weight. Big, dramatic, formative violations are easy for the listener to understand. The fries are something else. The fries are the kind of thing that should not still hurt. The fries are the kind of thing a normal parent would expect their adult child to have moved past. The fries are still in Marceline's head 1,000 years later because the museum she has built has a room for them. The museum keeps the small grievances too. The museum keeps everything. The episode ends with a kind of reconciliation. Hudson sees the song landed. Hudson, in a way that the show treats as both genuine and inadequate, apologizes. He returns to the nitosphere. The world goes back to normal. Marceline, after the episode, continues to have a complicated relationship with her father across the rest of the series. Never simple, never resolved, never quite warm. The fries do not fix anything. The fries just put the relationship on the record. The fries become part of the corpus of small, specific, anchored memories that Marceline keeps inside herself. The way she keeps Hambo, the way she keeps the Cheers song, the way she keeps the tape of Simon's voice. The fries are an exhibit in the museum. The exhibit is small. The exhibit is permanent. What it came from the nitosphere accomplishes in the larger architecture of Marceline's character is to widen the field of what the show wants you to understand about her memory. It is not just Simon. It is not just the apocalypse. It is also a father who failed her in mundane, recognizable, sitcom-shaped ways. Marceline carries those memories with the same precision she carries the bigger ones. The museum does not discriminate. The museum keeps the dramatic and the trivial side by side because Marceline's whole interior life has been built on the principle that nothing is too small to remember. Every fry counts. Every betrayal, no matter how absurd, gets a plaque. The 1,000-year-old vampire is an extremely thorough archivist, and her father is one of her most consistent subjects. The archive has a physical location, not all of it. Marceline's true archive lives in her head, but a smaller, more visible version of it lives in her actual home, in a room that the show takes you inside in an episode called Marceline's Closet, Season 3, Episode 21, originally aired on the 12th of December in 2011. The premise of Marceline's Closet is, in its initial setup, a comedy of manners. Finn and Jake sneak into Marceline's house. Marceline returns home unexpectedly. Finn and Jake have to hide. They end up trapped in her bedroom for the entire day, watching her go about her private life, unable to reveal themselves without setting off her vampire temper. The episode is structured as a low-grade spy thriller in the most domestic possible setting. The thing the show is using this premise for, however, is not the comedy. The thing the show is using this premise for is to let you, through the eyes of two intruders, look at the room a 1,000-year-old vampire actually lives in. The room is full of objects. The room has shelves. The room has stacked piles of things that do not, on first glance, belong in the same space as each other. There is a snow globe. There are old photographs. There is sheet music. There is a stuffed animal of unknown provenance. possibly an early version of Hambo or a relative of him. There is a journal, there is a teddy bear, there are art supplies, there are pieces of jewellery that look like they belong to several different centuries. The room is, visually, a curated chaos. The animation team did not just dress the set with generic cool vampire decor, they filled it with specific, particular, memory-coded objects, almost any one of which could be its own episode. The show is letting you understand, through the visual density of the room itself, that Marceline's domestic environment is an annex to her interior museum. The museum that exists inside her head has overflowed, slightly, into the physical space she occupies, because some memories require a physical anchor and cannot be held entirely in the mind. Finn and Jake spend the episode in this room, watching her. They watch her sing, they watch her bathe, they watch her exist privately, without the performance she puts on when other people are around. The show treats this as a kind of low-grade violation. They are seeing things they have no right to see. They are seeing the version of Marceline that exists when she does not know she is being watched. The version that is more tender, more vulnerable, more domestically routine than the cool, hovering, bass-playing, public persona. The episode plays this for jokes, but the underlying ethical content of it is similar to the violation in Memory of a Memory. They are inside her private space without permission. They are seeing the museum from the inside when she did not invite them in. The episode ends, eventually, with the discovery and Marceline's predictable annoyance and a relatively soft resolution. The point, however, is the room. The point is the visual evidence the show has placed in front of you. The point is that Marceline does not just remember things in the abstract. She lives surrounded by them. The objects in her closet are the same kind of memory machinery as the museum exhibits in Memory of a Memory and the bear in Sky Witch. They are physical anchors for an interior life that has too much in it to be held without help. The 1,000-year-old vampire needs the closet. Without the closet, the inside of her head would have to do all the work alone, and the inside of her head, by this point in her life, is already doing the work of holding multiple lifetimes' worth of vanished people. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The most ambitious thing the show ever did with Marceline's memory was an 8-episode miniseries that arrived in late 2015 and reorganized large parts of what the audience thought they knew about her. The miniseries is called Stakes. It runs from Season 7, Episode 5 through Season 7, Episode 12. It originally aired across 4 consecutive nights from the 16th to the 19th of November in 2015. The premise is that Marceline, after almost a millennium of being a vampire, decides she wants to be human again. Princess Bubblegum, who has the scientific capacity to do this, agrees to help, too. The first episode of the miniseries is about the procedure, which works. Marceline becomes human, and then, almost immediately, things go wrong, because the act of removing the vampire essence from Marceline accidentally releases all the original vampires she had absorbed over the centuries, and they come back to life as separate beings, and Marceline has to hunt them down. The plot of Stakes is a vampire hunt. The thing Stakes is actually about is Marceline's memory. Across the 8 episodes, the show uses the vampire hunt premise as a frame for a series of flashbacks that fill in a part of Marceline's life the audience has never seen before. The post-apocalyptic period after Simon, the period in which she was alone after Simon was lost to the crown, before she became the public figure of Marceline the Vampire Queen, the period in which she met the original vampires, fought them, absorbed their essences, and slowly became the kind of immortal she is now. The flashbacks are dense. The flashbacks are character defining. The flashbacks are also, in a very deliberate structural choice, intercut with the present day Marceline, who is human, who is mortal, who is living briefly inside a body that can die, and who has to confront what that means after 1,000 years of being unable to. The flashbacks introduce, for the first time on screen, Marceline's mother. Her name is Elise. The episode does not give her a long arc. It gives her a few brief sequences and one song. The song is Everything Stays. The song is sung by Elise to a small Marceline in flashback in the wreckage of the post-war world before Simon found her. The song is the song that opened this video. The song is the lullaby Marceline's mother sang to her, that Marceline has been carrying inside herself for almost 1,000 years, that has now been excavated by the show in the form of a flashback for the audience to hear for the first time. The song is brief. The song is sung in a soft, unaffected voice. The song is then handed forward across the rest of the mini-series to be sung again by other characters in slightly different arrangements until it becomes the unofficial theme song of the entire arc. The lyrical content of Everything Stays is, in plain language, an argument about how change works. The song says that everything stays right where you left it. Everything stays, but it still changes ever so slightly, daily and nightly. The song is a paradox at its core. It says that things are simultaneously stable and changing, that the past does not go away, that the past is always also slightly different from how you remember it. The song is, on its face, a lullaby for a frightened child. The song is, in deeper context, a working theory of memory and time handed down from a dying mother to a daughter who will go on to live for 1,000 years and will need that theory more than any normal child could ever need it. The show's choice to make this song the centerpiece of Stakes and to attribute it to Marceline's mother has a specific architectural function. It establishes that Marceline did not develop her relationship to memory in isolation. Her mother gave her a song. The song contains an instruction. The instruction is, hold things. Notice that they are still there, even when they are slightly different. Take responsibility for the continuous existence of the things you have seen. The song is the original training. Everything Marceline does across the entire run of the show with regard to remembering Simon and remembering Hambo and remembering the fries, and remembering the Cheers theme, and remembering the smell of the world before the war. All of it can be read as a fulfillment of the lullaby her mother sang to her, the lullaby that told her things stay where you left them, the lullaby that asked her to act as though that were true, There is a moment late in Stakes, after Marceline has been turned back into a vampire to defeat the released originals, where she stands in front of a sunrise. The image is staged with extreme care. The sunrise is the thing that, as a vampire, can kill her. The sunrise is the thing she cannot, normally, look at without burning. The image of Marceline looking at a sunrise is the image of a person looking at her own death, and in the moment of looking, she sings the song. She sings Everything Stays. She sings the song her mother sang to her in the language of a woman who has now lived 1,000 years past the moment of the original singing, and the song means something different now than it meant when she first heard it. It is no longer a comfort, it is a creed, it is a theory of how she has stayed alive. It is the explicit articulation of the discipline she has been practicing by herself in the dark for as long as the world has had her in it. The miniseries also restages, with new emphasis, several aspects of Marceline's relationship to her own past that the show had hinted at but never fully unpacked. There is a sequence involving the original vampires, including a character called the Vampire King, who turns out to have a much longer relationship to Marceline than the audience knew about. The flashbacks show Marceline as a young vampire learning to hunt, learning to be cruel, learning to be the kind of being that could survive the world she had been born into. The show does not soften this. The show does not pretend that the period after Simon was a period of innocence. The show shows you a Marceline who became the vampire queen by doing things she would later choose not to talk about. The plain statement of this part of the mini-series is that Marceline's interior museum has, in addition to the rooms full of love and grief, rooms full of violence she perpetrated when there was no other way to keep going, to keep. The museum keeps those too. The museum is honest. The museum keeps the things that the curator, in the present day, would not want to be defined by, because the museum's job is not to flatter the curator. The museum's job is to remember. The mini-series closes with a return to baseline. Marceline is a vampire again. The originals are gone. The world has shifted slightly, and Marceline, who briefly inhabited a mortal body, has come back to immortality with a new awareness of what it means to be the one who continues. The structural payoff of Stakes is not the vampire hunt. The structural payoff of Stakes is the song that started the mini-series as a lullaby, ends it as a thesis statement. The song her mother sang to her becomes the song that defines what kind of person she has decided to be. Everything stays. The discipline of remembering stays. The bear stays. The fries stay. Simon stays, even when Simon does not stay. The mother who sang the song stays in the song, in the daughter. In the long wake of memory, she trails behind her as she moves across the centuries. There is one more major engagement the show makes with Marceline's memory, and it does it after Adventure Time itself has ended. In November of 2020, more than 2 years after the original series ran its finale, an episode of the spin-off series Distant Lands aired on HBO Max. The episode is called Obsidian. It originally aired on the 19th of November in 2020. The single accompanying it, called Monster was released on the 10th of November in 2020. Obsidian is a 45-minute special, comparable in scope to a small movie, and its central subject is the relationship between Marceline and Princess Bubblegum, looked at through the lens of how they got to where they are. The structure of Obsidian moves freely between the present, in which the two of them are an established couple living together, and a series of flashbacks to earlier moments in their relationship that the original show never fully showed. The flashbacks are, by the standards of the original show, more emotionally direct than anything the audience had seen before. The original Adventure Time, particularly with regard to Marceline and Bubblegum, operated under network restrictions that forced the show to be oblique about the nature of their relationship for years. By the time of Obsidian, those restrictions had loosened. The special is allowed, finally, to look directly at things the original show had to gesture toward. There is a sequence in which a younger Marceline and a younger Bubblegum in the earlier days of their on and off connection fight over a value disagreement that fractures them. There is a sequence in which Marceline, alone after the breakup, writes the song that gives the special its emotional spine. The song is called Monster. The song is a Marceline song through and through, bass-driven, unsparing, lyrically focused on self-image. The lyrics, paraphrased, are about Marceline's belief that she is fundamentally a destructive being, and her grief that the person she loves seems to also believe this, and her question of whether she should accept the framing or fight it. The song, importantly, is not just sung in the present day. The song is shown in flashback, being written, Marceline in the past, with a guitar in a cave inside the Glass Kingdom, working through chord changes, putting words to the worst version of herself. The audience is being shown the moment of composition. The audience is being shown the act of a 1,000-year-old vampire turning a wound into a piece of music. This is one of the rare on-screen moments in any version of the show in which Marceline is depicted in the actual labour of memorialization. She is not just remembering things, she is converting them into a form that can be carried. She is making a song out of a feeling so that the feeling can outlive the moment that produced it. The song is the museum's curatorial process made visible. The audience is being shown how an exhibit gets built. Obsidian also gives Bubblegum finally a chance to articulate her own version of what their shared past has meant. There are moments in the special in which Bubblegum, in the present, looks at Marceline with the kind of recognition that Simon will never again be able to muster. The scene is staged as a mirror, two long-lived beings, each of whom has access to most of the other's history, looking at each other and being seen. It is the first time in the run of the show, taken as a whole, that Marceline has been in a sustained romantic relationship with a being who can actually hold the memory of their relationship symmetrically. Bubblegum can remember. Bubblegum can remember the early Candy Kingdom. Bubblegum can remember the centuries before the show began. Bubblegum can remember things Marceline did and said and was in a way that nobody else in Marceline's life has been able to. This is, in the architecture of the larger thesis, the closest the show comes to giving Marceline relief from the asymmetry. Bubblegum is the one person who can be the other half of the witness. Bubblegum can carry some of the load. Bubblegum cannot carry all of it. Bubblegum did not know Simon before the crown, was not present for the Mushroom War, was not in Brooklyn, was not at Marceline's mother's bedside, has no direct memory of Hambo's first fitting. Bubblegum's memory of Marceline is a partial archive, but it is a real archive. It is the only secondary archive that exists, and the show is letting you understand, in Obsidian, that the discovery of even a partial witness, after 1,000 years of being the only one, is the closest thing to grace that this character has ever been allowed. Monster, the song, is the form that grace takes. The song is a confession. The song is also, in its very existence, evidence that Marceline has continued to do the work. She has continued to convert her interior life into transmissible form. She has continued to make music out of memory. She has continued to refuse to let any of it stay locked inside her where nobody can hear it. She has been, across 1,000 years, a one-woman archive, willing, when the right person finally appears, to begin sharing copies of what she has held. The song is one such copy. The song is a piece of the museum that she has agreed, finally, to let someone else look at. The kiss in Come Along With Me, the original series finale, which aired on the 3rd of September in 2018, is also worth slowing down inside, because it occupies a specific place in the architecture of memory. The show has been building around Marceline for almost a decade. The finale is 44 minutes long. It compresses an enormous amount of plot, character, and resolution into a single extended episode. Buried inside the larger narrative is a moment in which Marceline and Bubblegum, in the middle of a crisis, in the immediate context of believing they may not survive what is coming, kiss. The kiss is brief. The kiss is not surrounded by speeches. The kiss is treated by the show with a specific kind of restraint that is doing thematic work. The thing that is being communicated is not the kiss itself. The kiss is a confirmation. The kiss is the on-screen registration of a relationship that has been quietly accumulating in the background of the show since at least season 3, and that the audience has been asked to read between the lines of for years. The finale, in giving the kiss to the audience directly, is making a statement about what the show was always doing. The statement, in the larger thematic context of Marceline's relationship to memory, is that some things the show held back from saying directly were nevertheless always being said. The kiss is a piece of memory the show always intended to deliver. The fact that it was delivered late, in compressed form, in the middle of a finale, does not diminish it. If anything, the timing reinforces a specific argument about how memory works inside this universe. The thing that has been there all along will eventually become visible, given enough time, given enough trust, given the right audience. The Candy Kingdom will eventually be told the truth. The vampire and the princess will eventually be allowed to be on screen as what they were always going to be. The work of remembering, in other words, is not just for the characters inside the show. It is also a model for how the audience is asked to engage with the show itself. You are being asked to remember things you saw the show imply 3 or 4 seasons before the show was allowed to confirm them. You are being asked to keep your own museum. This is the deeper reason that Marceline functions as the show's avatar of memory in a way that no other character does. She is not just inside the story remembering things. She is also the figure through which the show teaches the audience to remember things, to hold images for a long time before their meaning resolves, to track a stuffed bear across multiple episodes spread across multiple seasons, to carry the Cheers theme from Simon and Marcy in your own head, all the way to a future moment when it will resurface and you will recognize it the way Marceline recognizes it in the Ice King's hum. The show is asking the audience to develop the same archival discipline that Marceline has had to develop in order to be the person she is. The show, in this sense, is training its viewers to be small versions of Marceline, to be witnesses, to carry small things forward across long stretches of time, to recognize a song when it returns, to recognize a bear when it appears on a witch's shelf, to recognize that the man humming a song he does not know used to be the man who taught it to the woman watching him. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is a thread that runs through everything that has been said so far in this essay, and it deserves to be pulled out and looked at by itself. The thread is music. Marceline is, by an enormous margin, the most musical character in Adventure Time. She sings more songs than any other character in the show, by a count that is not particularly close. She plays the bass guitar that she carved from her father's battle axe. She writes, she composes, she performs. The fact that she is musical is not a personality quirk. The fact that she is musical is the actual mechanism by which the asymmetric witness function is performed. Music is how Marceline preserves the things she has been asked to remember. Music is the format in which her museum's exhibits are stored. This is why almost every memory-coded moment in the show involving Marceline involves a song. The Fries song with her father, the Cheers theme with Simon, Remember You with the Ice King, Everything Stays with her mother, Monster with Bubblegum, I Am Just Your Problem from the earlier seasons, the Stakes opening theme, the lullaby Marceline sings in Marceline's closet. The pattern is too consistent to be accidental. The show has decided, structurally, that Marceline's memories are stored in the form of music, and that when she needs to retrieve them, she does so by singing them. This is not a metaphor. This is a literal mechanism the show uses. Over and over, across nearly a decade of episodes, other characters have songs in Adventure Time. The show is full of music, but for Marceline, the music is the memory. The two things are the same thing. There is a reason this matters, and the reason is technical. Music has a specific property that other forms of preserved memory do not have. Music can be transmitted. Music can be sung by someone else. Music can be taught. The bear cannot be passed around without losing its meaning. The bear in someone else's hands is just an old plush toy. The fries recounted to a stranger is just a story about French fries. The smell of pre-war Brooklyn, even if it could be described, is locked inside Marceline's specific olfactory system and cannot be handed to anyone. But music can move. Music can be sung at someone, and that person can learn it, and they can sing it to someone else. Music is the only memory format in Marceline's archive that is structurally portable, which means that when Marceline writes a song, she is doing something specific. She is taking a memory that would otherwise die with her, and she is converting it into a format that can outlive her, that can be held by other people, that can persist beyond the singular vessel of her own 1,000-year-old skull. This is what the song Remember You actually is. It is the Ice King in his fragmentary state, asking Marceline to take what is left of him and put it into a form that can survive. He cannot remember himself. He needs her to do it for him. The song they write together is the format in which he is asking to be preserved. The fact that he does not even know what he is asking for, the fact that he thinks they are just writing a song, the fact that the entire ironic weight of the episode is built on his unawareness, does not change the underlying mechanic. He is, in his fragmentary way, depositing what is left of himself into the only archive in the room that can keep him. Marceline accepts the deposit. She finishes the song. The song now exists. The song is the surviving form of the man who was Simon Petrikov, jointly authored by the woman who remembers him and the husk who has forgotten her. The song is a kind of joint custody arrangement over the memory of one person, brokered between his current self and the woman who used to be his daughter. In everything but biology, everything stays, operates on the same mechanic in a different direction. Marceline's mother is dead. Marceline's mother cannot speak for herself anymore. The only piece of her mother that survives is the song. The song is sung in stakes by other characters, by Marceline herself, by Marceline's mother in flashback. The song moves around. The song is taught and retaught. The song becomes the medium through which a dead woman continues to speak to a daughter who has been alive for almost 1,000 years past her mother's death. Without the song, the mother is gone. With the song, the mother is everywhere. The song is played. The song is the survival mechanism. The song is the way memory has been engineered by Marceline and by the show to function as a transmissible substance. Even the Fries song does this. The Fries song is, in compressed form, the entire historical record of Hunson Abadir's failures as a parent, encoded into a melody short enough to be sung in less than a minute. Once the Fries song exists, the failure cannot be denied or forgotten. The song is a permanent record. The song forces the father, when he hears it, to acknowledge what he did. The song is, in a real sense, the courtroom in which Marceline finally gets to bring evidence against him. The fact that the trial has been delayed by hundreds of years does not matter. The song does not expire. The song is still ready when she needs it. This understanding of music as the preferred format for Marceline's archive also explains, retroactively, why the show keeps returning to musical moments in her arc, even when the plot does not require them. Why entire episodes are structured around her writing or performing a song. Why the show invests so heavily in Olivia Olsen's actual singing voice, which is recognizable, distinctive, and central to almost every emotionally important Marceline scene. Olivia Olsen is not just voicing Marceline. Olivia Olsen is also performing the function that Marceline performs inside the show. She is the vehicle through which memory is converted into transmissible form. The songs she sings as Marceline are the songs that the audience can sing back. The songs are how the show makes its memory of Marceline portable for the audience as well. There is one more layer to all of this that the show approaches obliquely, and it is worth saying out loud. The reason memory as music is the right format for Marceline specifically, as opposed to any other character, is that vampires in Adventure Time are creatures of unbroken continuity. They do not die of natural causes. They do not lose their memory through the passage of time. They are, in the world the show has built, the species best suited to be the long-term storage device for a civilization's lost knowledge. Marceline is not just a vampire who happens to remember a lot of things. Marceline is the kind of being for whom remembering is a structural responsibility. The show is making, very quietly, a claim about what immortality is for. It is not for power. It is not for fun. It is not for endless youth. Immortality in Adventure Time is for memory. The reason Marceline gets to live 1,000 years is so that there is someone left who remembers what was here before. The vampires are the show's institutional memory. They are the people who got assigned the job because they are the only ones who can hold it. This frames stakes. Marceline's choice to briefly become human in a different and more specific light. When Marceline asks Bubblegum to make her mortal again, she is not just asking for a vacation from immortality. She is asking to be relieved of the job. She is asking to put down the archive. She is asking, however briefly, for permission to forget the way mortals get to forget, by dying. The mini-series makes her live through the implications of that request, and then takes the request back. She has to be the vampire again. She has to keep the job. The mini-series is, in a real sense, a meditation on whether the asymmetric witness is allowed to retire, and the answer the show ultimately gives is no, not yet. There is still too much to remember. There is still nobody else who can do it. This is also why, in the closing seconds of Come Along With Me, the moment of resolution between Marceline and Bubblegum is treated with the weight that it is. The show is not just resolving a romance. The show is, in its quietest possible way, finally giving Marceline a partner in the job, not a replacement, not a substitute, a partner, someone who can carry a portion, someone who can be present in the room when Marceline plays the songs, someone who can know the museum well enough to ask informed questions about its exhibits. The kiss is small because the resolution is structural. Marceline is no longer the only person in the world who remembers. She is now the only person who remembers the oldest layer, but she is no longer the only person who remembers the layer of her own adult life. The shoulders of the asymmetric witness have, for the first time in 1,000 years, been given a small amount of weight to put down. There is a way in which the entire run of Adventure Time, taken as a whole, can be read as the slow process of teaching Marceline to share the museum. The show begins with her almost entirely alone. She has Schwabel, she has her father, complicatedly. She has the Ice King, who does not remember her. She has acquaintances. She has the bass guitar. She has the closet full of objects. She does not have anyone who can hold what she has been holding. By the end of the show, after Hambo, after Sky Witch, after Stakes, after the kiss, after Obsidian, She has bubble gum. She has, in compressed form, exactly one other person, one after 1,000 years. The slowness of that accumulation is one of the most patient pieces of long-form character writing in the medium. The show was not in a rush. The show understood that Marceline's interior life was so vast that giving her one real partner across an entire animated series was a sufficient quantity of relief. The show did not need to give her a community. One person who can carry one corner of the load is enough. The accumulation also works the other way. Around Simon, the show spends a long time letting the Ice King be a joke, letting him be the comic relief antagonist, letting him kidnap princesses for episodic plot reasons, and then, very slowly, the show starts letting you see who is underneath the costume. I Remember You is one of those moments. Simon and Marcy is another. The episodes that explore his backstory continue to add layers until, by the end of the original series and into the spin-offs, the full shape of Simon Petrikov is visible to the audience in a way that the characters inside the show, with the exception of Marceline, cannot quite see. The audience, by the end, knows almost as much about Simon as Marceline does. The audience has been brought into the museum. The audience has been allowed to look at the exhibits. The audience has been deputized into the work of remembering. This is perhaps the deepest and most quietly radical thing Adventure Time does with Marceline's character. The show does not just depict the asymmetric witness. The show enlists the audience to share her function. The show hands you songs. The show shows you the bear. The show plants the Cheers theme inside your head and trusts you to recognize it when it returns. The show plays Everything Stays in flashback and trusts you to hum it later. The show, by the end, has built a network of distributed memory that reaches outside the screen and into the heads of the people watching. Every viewer who can sing Remember You from memory is, in a small way, a backup copy of Marceline's archive. Every person who can recite the lyrics to Everything Stays is helping to hold something that, inside the world of the show, only one person was originally able to hold. That is the achievement. That is the long, patient, almost decade-long achievement of what Adventure Time did with this character. It made her interior life into a public good. It took the loneliest possible function, the function of being the only person who remembers, and it slowly, song by song, episode by episode, built a community of secondary witnesses around her. The show ends with Marceline less alone than she was at the beginning, not because the apocalypse undid itself, not because Simon got better, not because her mother came back, but because the audience is, by the end, also a witness. The audience also remembers. The audience also carries the songs. The asymmetric witness is now part of a small but real chorus. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Now, there are things this essay has not yet said about the way memory functions inside Marceline specifically, and one of them deserves to be brought into the open. To Marceline, almost alone among the major characters of Adventure Time, has a relationship with her own memory that is not characterized by trust. She does not assume that her memory is reliable. She does not assume that what she remembers is exactly how it happened. She has lived long enough to understand that memory drifts. The lullaby her mother gave her contains the instruction inside it. Everything stays, but it still changes, ever so slightly. The song is teaching her from the very beginning that the act of remembering is not a passive recording. It is an active reconstruction that loses small things in transit every time, and that the only way to honor the original is to keep returning to it, to keep singing it, to keep checking that the version in your head still resembles the version that was originally there. This is why Marceline, across the show, is so often shown returning to the same memories. The Cheers song does not just appear once, it appears again. The image of Simon protecting her does not just appear in I Remember You, it appears in Simon and Marcy, it appears in flashbacks across stakes, it appears in distant lands. The bear does not just appear in Sky Witch, it is present in the background in earlier and later episodes. The show is showing you structurally that Marceline does the work of returning. She does not just remember once, she remembers continuously. She visits the exhibits in her own museum on a schedule that the show is making visible to you by restaging the same images across different episodes. Every return is a refresh. Every return is a checking in. Every return is the curator walking through her own galleries to confirm that nothing has been moved by accident. This is also why the show treats unauthorized intrusions into Marceline's memory as so serious. Memory of a memory is the most direct example, but there are smaller versions throughout. Marceline does not like it when other people try to access her past without her consent. She does not like it when her father tries to use her childhood against her. She does not like it when the Ice King, in his fragmentary state, accidentally bumps into a memory he no longer has the context to handle. She does not like it when Bubblegum, at certain moments in Obsidian, tries to recall a version of their shared past that does not match Marceline's curation of it. The boundary around the museum is real. The boundary is enforced. The boundary is one of the few hard boundaries Marceline maintains, because the integrity of what is inside the museum is, in a real way, the integrity of the entire person she has built herself into across 1,000 years. This is also the reason that when Marceline does choose to share something from her museum, the act of sharing is treated by the show as a major event. The Fries song is a major event. Remember You is a major event. The reveal of Hambo as a meaningful object is a major event. The reveal of her mother in Stakes is a major event. The writing of Monster is a major event. Each of these is the curator opening a previously private exhibit to a specific, chosen audience. Each of these is a controlled release of preserved memory into the world. Each of these is structurally an act of trust. Marceline is trusting that the person she is sharing with will not damage the exhibit, will not misunderstand it, will not take it and run, will let it be looked at and then leave it intact for her to put back where it came from. This is why the show pairs Marceline with Bubblegum in the end, rather than with anyone else. Bubblegum is a scientist. Bubblegum, in her own way, also keeps records. Bubblegum has her own laboratory, her own notebooks, her own carefully maintained archive of the Candy Kingdom's history. Bubblegum understands the discipline of preservation, even when she does not always agree with how Marceline practices it. The two of them are, in a sense, the only two characters in the show who run their own museums. The Kingdom Scale Museum that Bubblegum runs and the Personal Scale Museum that Marceline runs are different in scope, but similar in temperament. They are both built by long-lived beings who understood early that nothing survives by itself and who took the responsibility of survival into their own hands. The relationship between them is, in the deepest reading, a partnership between two archivists, two people who have decided against the natural decay of the world to keep some things on purpose. The romance is real, the longing is real, the complicated history is real, but underneath all of it is a structural compatibility that the show has been quietly building for almost a decade. Marceline and Bubblegum can be in a relationship because they understand each other's work. They both know what it costs to keep things. They both know what it costs to lose them. They are both the rare kind of long-lived being who have decided to take memory seriously enough to make it the organizing principle of their lives. Hambo, in this light, is also a covenant. The bear is not just a memento. The bear is a contract Simon made with Marceline in the post-apocalyptic ruins of a dead country when he gave her a small object that he asked her to keep safe. The contract was simple. Keep this. Look after it. Do not let it disappear. Marceline has kept the contract for 1,000 years. She lost the bear, briefly, to Ash, and the loss of the bear in that incident is treated by the show as something close to a moral injury. The bear was the object she had been entrusted with. To lose it was to break the original contract. Sky Witch is the episode in which the contract is restored. The Bubblegum, in giving up her own memorial object, the t-shirt, to retrieve the bear, is also entering into the contract. She is signaling that she also understands what the bear is and what it is for. She is becoming, in that moment, a co-signer of the original promise. The bear comes back to Marceline, but now there is a second person in the room who knows what the bear means. The contract has been quietly extended. This is, in the most literal possible reading, what Bubblegum offers Marceline that nobody else can. Bubblegum can co-sign the contracts. Bubblegum can witness the witnessing. Bubblegum can stand in the gallery next to Marceline and look at the same exhibit and understand, more or less, what she is looking at. The asymmetric witness gets, for the first time, a partial mirror. The mirror is not perfect. The mirror does not reflect the oldest exhibits with full fidelity because the mirror was not present for them, but the mirror is real. The mirror is an actual second consciousness that has agreed to take the museum seriously. After 1,000 years, that is enough. That is, in fact, more than the show was ever willing to promise was possible. There is one image from the show that, when you understand all of this, becomes almost unbearable in its quiet weight. The image is Marceline in her room at night, alone. She is doing something small. She is tuning her bass. She is reading a magazine. She is humming. The candles are low. The window is open. There is no plot happening. The episode is happening somewhere else. This is just a passing shot of her in her domestic environment, the kind of shot the show uses to establish location before cutting to the actual scene. Inside that small throwaway image is 1,000 years of accumulated experience. Inside that small image is the entire museum. The bear is somewhere on a shelf. The journal is somewhere on a desk. The bass is in her hands. The pre-war world is still in her head. Simon is still humming the Cheers theme somewhere on the other side of Ooh. Her mother is still singing Everything Stays Inside the song that Marceline still knows by heart. All of it is in the room with her. All of it is inside her. And nobody walking past the window would know that is the shape of the thing, the 1,000-year-old vampire. Alone in her room, holding more memory than any single being should ever be asked to hold, doing the small, ordinary tasks of an evening, while the entire vanished world she once lived in continues to exist inside her head as the only place where it still exists at all. The show, by the end, has earned the right to ask you to look at that image and understand what is in it. The show, by the end, has trained you to be capable of seeing the museum from outside. The show has done its work. The show has made the asymmetric witness visible to an audience that, before the show began, would not have known what to look for. There is a small detail about the bass guitar that has not yet been said in this essay, and it is worth slowing down on, because it is one of the most concise pieces of character design in the entire show. Marceline's bass guitar, the instrument she plays in almost every scene where music is involved, is not a normal bass guitar. It is, according to the show's established backstory, an instrument that Marceline made herself by carving it from her father's battle axe. The thing she uses to make music is, in literal physical fact, the weapon her father used to hurt people. She took it, she altered it, she converted it from an instrument of violence into an instrument of preservation. The same hands that her father used for harm, she now uses for the work of memory. The axe is the instrument. The instrument is the axe. The fact of the conversion is the entire thesis of the character compressed into one prop. Think about what that means inside the larger structure of how Marceline relates to her own past. Her father is a difficult, unreliable, occasionally cruel figure who has consistently failed her. She did not run from him. She did not pretend he did not exist. She did not pretend that the inheritance he left her was something other than what it was. She took the weapon, she kept the weapon, and then she did the slow, deliberate, transformative work of making the weapon into something that could not hurt anyone, that could only sing. The bass is, in the most literal possible reading, an act of curation performed on her own family inheritance. She converted the worst thing about her father into the most useful thing about herself. The museum of Marceline does not just hold what others gave her. The museum also performs alterations on what it receives. The museum reshapes its acquisitions, reshapes its. The bear is preserved. The fries are converted into a song. The crown is left untouched on Simon's head because there is nothing she can do with it. The axe is reforged into music. This pattern, once you see it, runs through almost every memory-coded object in Marceline's possession. Hambo, the bear, is given to her as a comfort by Simon and is preserved as comfort. The Cheers theme is given to her as comfort by Simon and is preserved as a private grief. The Fry's incident is given to her as a small wound by her father and is preserved as a song. The mother's lullaby is given to her as a parting gift by a dying woman and is preserved as the central organizing principle of her interior life. Each object enters the museum at one emotional valence and is then either kept at that valence or carefully retuned. Marceline is not a passive collector. Marceline is a working curator who decides on receipt what each item is going to mean inside the larger collection. Some items keep their original meaning, some items get repurposed, some items get put behind glass and never touched again. The museum is alive. The curator is making decisions every day. The decisions she makes are also visible in what she chooses to write songs about and what she chooses to leave wordless. She has a song about the Fries. She has a song about bubblegum called I Am Just Your Problem, sung in Season 3, Episode 9, in an episode called What Was Missing, which originally aired on the 26th of September in 2011. She has Remember You, jointly authored with the Ice King. She has Monster, written in the cave, sung in obsidian. She does not, importantly, have a song specifically about her mother's death. Everything Stays, the song associated with her mother, is a song her mother wrote that Marceline inherits, that Marceline performs but did not compose. There is a plain statement to be made about this. The losses Marceline has been able to put into music are losses she has, in some sense, been able to process. The loss she has not been able to put into music is the loss too foundational to be reduced. Her mother does not get a Marceline song. Her mother gets to keep her own song, sung by Marceline, unaltered. The deepest exhibit in the museum is the one the curator has decided not to renovate. The same is true, in a different way, of Simon. Marceline sings about the Ice King. She sings with the Ice King. She does not, however, write a song called Simon because the original Simon does not need her to write him into a song. Simon is preserved in the songs they wrote together when he was still partially himself. He is preserved in the Cheers theme. He is preserved in Remember You. The Marceline curated archive of Simon is built out of joint compositions, not Marceline-only compositions, because Marceline's instinct is that the most accurate preservation of him is one that includes his actual contribution to the song, even when he can no longer remember who he is. Even when his contributions are made in the fragmentary state of the Ice King, the songs are still partially his. The archive treats them as such. The museum, in other words, has a strong scholarly ethic. It does not erase its co-authors. It does not pretend that Marceline is the sole creator of the things she has been entrusted with. It credits Simon, it credits her mother, it credits the world that produced the Cheers theme. Even though that world is gone, there is one more episode that should be brought into this essay before the closing argument is made, and it is one that the original brief did not explicitly emphasize, but that fits inside the larger pattern. The episode is called Everything Stays. It is the second episode of the Stakes miniseries. It is Season 7, Episode 6. It originally aired on the 16th of November in 2015. The episode is named after the song, and the song is given its first full performance inside this episode. The structure of the episode is built around the song. The song appears in flashback. The song appears in the present day. The song is sung by Marceline's mother. The song is sung by Marceline herself. The episode is, more than any other in the entire run of the show, an episode about the way a piece of music can be the structural skeleton of a person's interior life. Without the song, the episode would not exist. Without the episode, the song would not have a place to land in the audience's collective memory. The two things are mutually constitutive. There is a moment near the end of Everything Stays, the episode in which Marceline, as a child, is being put to bed by her mother for what may be the last time. For what? The viewer, by this point, knows what the world outside the bedroom looks like. The viewer has seen the mushroom war. The viewer knows that the small girl being tucked in is going to lose her mother very soon. In some manner, the show does not specify in detail and is going to spend the next 1,000 years trying to remember what this particular evening felt like. The mother sings the song, the child listens, the mother leaves the room, the light goes out. The episode ends with a transition back to the present, where adult Marceline is processing the memory of the moment in the larger context of her current crisis. The way the episode is staged, the way the song is performed, the way the cuts between past and present are timed. All of this is the show signaling very precisely that the moment of original singing is the foundation of everything that comes after. The lullaby is the bedrock. The lullaby is the load-bearing memory. This is also, perhaps, the moment to talk about Olivia Olson's voice as a specific instrument that the show was lucky to have. Olivia Olson, who voices Marceline across the entire run of the show, has a singing voice that is recognizable, distinctive, and unusually mature for a character who is sometimes drawn as a teenager. Her voice has a slight warble in the lower register, a clear ring in the upper register, and a particular way of holding a long note that makes it sound like she is leaning slightly into a memory rather than just performing a song. Her real-world musical career outside of Adventure Time has produced material that the show occasionally borrows from. The song Bad Little Boy, sung by the gender-swapped vampire character Marshall Lee in an episode that originally aired in 2013, is voiced by Donald Glover, but Olivia Olson's contributions to the original Marceline songs, Remember You, I Am Just Your Problem, Everything Stays, Monster, The Fries Song, and many others, have a specific timbral consistency that the show treats as a load-bearing element of the character. Marceline sounds like Marceline because Olivia Olson sounds like Olivia Olson. The voice is the museum's primary delivery mechanism. The voice is what the audience actually hears when memory is being transmitted. This is also why, in the architecture of the show, Marceline's songs land harder than the songs of any other character in Adventure Time. Other characters sing. Princess Bubblegum sings, Finn sings, Jake sings, BMO sings, the Ice King, comedically, sings. None of them carry the same weight as Marceline. Part of this is the writing. Part of this is Olivia Olson's voice. Part of this is the structural decision the show made very early to make Marceline the character through whom memory is converted into music. The audience has been trained to take her songs seriously because the show has been training the audience for a decade to recognize that her songs are not just musical interludes, they are the actual content of her interior life, externalized for the first time, made transmissible, briefly available to be heard before they go back inside her, where almost nobody else can access them. There is a quiet structural argument the show is making across all of this about what makes someone worth remembering. The argument is not that Marceline is worth remembering because she is special. The argument is that Marceline is worth remembering because she is the one doing the remembering. The function precedes the personality. The job creates the character. By the time you reach the end of the show, you do not love Marceline because she has done some specific lovable thing. You love her because you have watched her for a decade refuse to let go of things that the rest of the world has forgotten. The cumulative weight of her insistence on remembering is what makes her a character you cannot forget. The reciprocity is the entire emotional architecture of the show's relationship to its own audience. Marceline remembers everything. The audience remembers Marceline. Nothing is allowed to disappear without someone holding it on its way out. This is also, in retrospect, what the entire show was doing with its other characters. Finn loses his arm. Jake gets older. Bubblegum's policies on the kingdom shift. The Ice King is revealed to be a dying man. The Lich is allowed to be present and absent across multiple seasons. The world of Ooh accumulates. Adventure Time, taken across all 10 seasons and the spin-offs, is a long-form study of accumulation. Things happen and stay happened. Consequences linger. Background characters return. The show, in its narrative design, behaves like Marceline's interior life. It refuses to let things drop. It keeps the back rooms full. It assumes that the audience will be willing to remember small details across very long stretches of time, because the show itself is doing the same thing in its writing room every week, season after season. The show is, in this sense, also a museum. The show is also performing the curatorial work that Marceline performs inside the show. The two are mirrors of each other. The show learned how to do its job by paying attention to its own most archival character. There is a final implication of this, and it is the implication that brings the entire essay back to where it started. In the song the mother sang to the child in the dark before the world ended, or the world. The implication is that the show, in giving Marceline this much room to be the asymmetric witness, was also making a quiet argument about what art is for. Art, in the version of Art Adventure Time is interested in, is the conversion of memory into a transmissible substance. Art is what the curator does when she decides that a particular exhibit needs to leave the museum and become a song the world can sing. Art is the moment in which Marceline writes Monster in the Cave. Art is the moment in which Simon writes his half of Remember You without remembering why. Art is the moment in which Marceline's mother sings Everything Stays to a child she will not live to see grow up. Art in Adventure Time is what memory does when memory has been carried so long that it has to be released in some form, even if the form is incomplete, even if the form will be misunderstood, even if the form will outlive its original referent and be sung by people who do not know what it is. That is, perhaps, the most generous reading of what Marceline has been doing across this entire show. She has been making art out of what was given to her. She has been refusing to let what she was given die unread. She has been the one curator left in the museum, working alone late at night, making sure that every exhibit is dusted, every plaque is straight, every piece of audio is still playable on the equipment. The audience, as it watches her, learns slowly what kind of work that is. The audience, by the end, can do a small portion of it themselves. The audience can hum the Cheers theme. The audience can recite the lyrics to Everything Stays. The audience can recognize Hambo when it appears. The museum has been in some sense distributed. There is a way in which Adventure Time, as a show, ends not with the kiss in Come Along With Me, not with the closing montage, not with the song Time Adventure performed by BMO and the rest of the cast, not even with the 10,000-year flash forward that the finale includes near its end. The way Adventure Time, as a show, actually ends is in the quiet handoff that happens between Marceline and the audience over the course of a decade. The handoff is invisible at any single moment. The handoff happens in the cumulative effect of having watched for years a 1,000-year-old vampire perform the work of remembering, while you, the viewer, slowly learned to perform a small portion of it alongside her. By the time the show is over, the audience has been quietly recruited into the museum's staff. The audience has been entrusted with a portion of what Marceline could not, by herself, carry forever. That is the final and deepest thing the show does with its most musical character. It enlists you, it hands you part of the load, it trusts you to keep singing. There is a sequence in the original series that has not yet been brought into this essay, and it deserves a moment of slow attention because it is, in compressed form, the entire thesis acted out in a single scene. The sequence is from the back half of the show in an episode called Broke His Crown, Season 6, Episode 26, originally aired on the 18th of March in 2015. In the episode, Princess Bubblegum, Marceline, and the Ice King go inside the Ice King's mind together by means of a piece of equipment Bubblegum has built. The premise is that the Ice King's crown has been damaged, and that the damage may have created an opportunity to access parts of Simon Petrikov that have been inaccessible for centuries. The three of them travel into the Ice King's interior life the way Finn and Jake once travelled into Marceline's, and they find a kind of ruined castle inside. The castle is full of fragments. The fragments are Simon. The fragments are what is left of him after the crown finished its work. Marceline, inside this sequence, is recognizable as Marceline in a way that the episode treats as load-bearing. She knows what she is looking at. She knows which fragments are real Simon and which are crown-corrupted noise. She acts as a guide. She walks Bubblegum through the ruins of a man, room by room, identifying which pieces of him are the original article and which are not. She is, in this sequence, performing in literal physical space the function she has been performing in her own head for nearly 1,000 years. She is the docent of Simon Petrikov. She is the one who can tell you, with authority, which artifacts in the museum are real and which are reproductions. The episode lets her do this work in front of Bubblegum, and lets Bubblegum see her doing it. Bubblegum, watching Marceline navigate the wreckage of Simon's interior life, is being given an unobstructed view of the scale of what Marceline has been carrying. The show is letting Bubblegum see the museum properly, possibly for the first time. The episode does not over-explain. The episode just lets the moment sit. Bubblegum looks at Marceline. Marceline looks at the fragments. Simon, somewhere inside the ruins, briefly speaks in his own voice, and then the episode pulls them out. Broke His Crown is one of the most quietly important episodes for understanding why Marceline ends up with Bubblegum specifically rather than with anyone else, because it is the episode in which Bubblegum is given direct, witnessed access to the labor Marceline performs. Bubblegum had loved Marceline before this episode. Bubblegum, however, had not necessarily understood the structural job that Marceline does inside the ruins of the Ice King's mind. Bubblegum gets to see it. She gets to watch a 1,000-year-old vampire navigate the ruins of a man she has been remembering alone for centuries. She gets to see the precision, she gets to see the care, she gets to see how much of Marceline's adult emotional architecture has been shaped by the unbroken practice of going back to those ruins, walking through them, making sure they are still there. The relationship between Marceline and Bubblegum after Broke His Crown is different than it was before, because Bubblegum, at last, has seen what the inside of Marceline's job looks like. This is also, in retrospect, what makes the kiss in Come Along With Me feel earned rather than abrupt. The audience, by the time of the finale, has watched Bubblegum slowly come to understand who Marceline is in the deepest sense. The audience has watched the slow accumulation of evidence. Sky Witch, in which Bubblegum gives up the t-shirt to retrieve Hambo. Broke His Crown, in which Bubblegum sees Marceline curate the ruins of Simon. The various smaller scenes throughout the show, in which Bubblegum, in passing, demonstrates that she has been paying attention to what Marceline needs. The kiss is not the beginning of the relationship. The kiss is the public registration of a relationship that has been quietly organized by the show around the slow process of Bubblegum learning to be the second curator. The kiss is the shape that recognition finally takes when both characters have built up enough mutual understanding for the recognition to be possible. It is worth saying out loud before this essay closes that the achievement of this character is, in part, an achievement of patience. Adventure Time did not rush Marceline. The show introduced her in Season 1 in an episode called Evicted. Season 1, Episode 12, originally aired on the 2nd of August in 2010 as essentially a cool vampire antagonist who shows up to bully Finn and Jake out of their original home. The Marceline in that episode is not yet the Marceline this essay has been describing. The Marceline in that episode is a sketch, a surface design, a vampire-shaped mood with a bass guitar. The work of building her into the character she eventually becomes took 8 years. The bear is not introduced for years after the original appearance. The Simon connection is not revealed for years. The mother is not introduced until 2015. The full shape of her relationship with Bubblegum is not given to the audience directly until the finale and the spin-off. The character was assembled slowly, brick by brick, across the entire run of the show, with the trust that the audience would be willing to wait for the picture to fill in. That trust was, in retrospect, fully justified. The audience did wait. The audience did remember. The audience did the work alongside her. This is the small radical thing about how Adventure Time wrote Marceline. The show treated its audience the way Marceline treats the museum. It assumed that the audience could hold a great many small details across very long stretches of time and not lose them. It assumed that a stuffed bear introduced in passing would still mean something to the viewer 2 seasons later. It assumed that a song heard in flashback would still be recognizable when it returned, sung by a different character in a completely different episode. The show trusted the audience to be patient witnesses, and the audience, in the long run, justified that trust. The community that has formed around Adventure Time in the years since its conclusion is a community defined by a certain kind of careful attention to small details, the same attention that Marceline practices inside the show. The fans remember things, the fans cross-reference, the fans build wikis, the fans, in their relationship to the show, mirror the relationship the show's most archival character has to her own past. This is not an accident. This is the show's training program, made visible in the audience it produced. There is one more small fact that should be noted before this essay arrives at its closing image, because it sits underneath everything that has been said and adds a final layer of weight. Marceline does not age. She does not get tired in the way mortals get tired. She does not, in any of her long appearances on screen, complain about the burden of her memory in language that resembles complaint. She simply does the work. She holds the bear. She sings the songs. She returns to the exhibits. She lets the Ice King hum the Cheers theme without explaining where he learned it. She lets her father go back to the Nightosphere after the Fries song without forcing him to sit through a longer indictment. She lets Bubblegum approach the museum at her own pace, across years, without rushing the recognition. The labor is performed quietly. The labor is performed with grace. The labor is, in the most literal possible sense, the daily life of the character. The reason the show treats this labor with such care is, perhaps, that the show understands something about the nature of love at the timescales involved. Most romantic narratives are about the formation of a bond. Marceline's narrative is mostly about the maintenance of a bond after the other person can no longer hold up their side of it. Simon cannot hold up his side. Marceline holds it for both of them. Her mother is dead. Marceline carries the song her mother gave her. Hudson is unreliable. Marceline keeps the Fries song on file. Even Bubblegum, when she finally arrives, requires Marceline to keep doing some of the maintenance work alone, because the parts of Marceline's past that predate Bubblegum cannot be shared in full. The labor is asymmetric, and it remains asymmetric, and the show makes a quiet argument that some loves are like that. Some loves involve one person doing more than half the work indefinitely, not because the other person is bad, but because the conditions of the relationship, death, the crown, the apocalypse, the passage of 1,000 years, have made symmetric labor impossible. The argument the show is making in showing Marceline do this work without bitterness is that the work is worth doing anyway. The asymmetry does not invalidate the love. The asymmetry is the love in its long-form expression. To love someone for 1,000 years in a world where they cannot keep up with you is to do the work of remembering them across the gap. It is the only way that love survives at those time scales. The show is not saying this is easy. The show is not saying this is fair. The show is saying that this is what the work looks like when it is done well, and that Marceline, by doing it, is a model of a particular kind of difficult, sustained, mostly invisible love that other shows would not have known how to depict at all. There is a final, small image the show offers in the closing montage of Come Along With Me that brings all of this to its quietest possible landing. The montage shows the major characters of the show 10,000 years in the future, after Finn and Jake are long gone, after most of the original cast has died of natural causes, in a future populated by descendants and inheritors. Marceline is in this future. She is still alive. She is still recognizable. She has not aged. She is sitting somewhere in a future she did not ask for, surrounded by a world that has changed beyond recognition. And the audience understands, looking at this image, that the work has continued. The work will continue. The bear is still on a shelf somewhere, presumably. The songs are still in her head, presumably. The pre-war world she remembers is now 10,000 years further back than it was when the show started, and the gap between Marceline and the rest of the universe she lives in has only grown. The asymmetric witness is still in service. The job has no retirement. There is a final small grace note worth sitting with before this essay lands. Across the spin-off series Distant Lands, across the more recent Fiona and Cake series that arrived on Max in 2023, Marceline keeps appearing in cameo and in supporting roles, and every appearance, no matter how small, carries the cumulative weight of the museum she has been building since 2010. The character does not need much screen time anymore to land. She walks into a frame and the audience already knows what is inside her. The audience already knows about the bear. The audience already knows about Simon. The audience already knows about her mother, and the song, and the Cheers theme, and the fries, and the cave in the Glass Kingdom where Monster was written. The character has accumulated so much weight across so many episodes that even a passing appearance feels saturated. This is what long-form character writing buys when it is done with this much patience and this much trust. The character becomes a body of memory that the audience can recognize at a glance. The character becomes, in some sense, a small public museum that lives in the head of every viewer who has spent time with her, and that museum continues to grow whenever the character appears, no matter how briefly, in any new context. That is the final argument the show makes. Memory, when carried with care, does not get smaller over time. Memory gets denser. The exhibits accumulate. The galleries fill in. The work of the asymmetric witness, when performed across decades, produces a structure that other people can eventually walk through, even if they were never present for the original events. The audience, by the end of the show, has been walking through Marceline's museum for years. The audience knows the layout. The audience knows the songs. The audience knows the bear. The job has been quietly distributed. The 1,000-year-old vampire is no longer alone in the gallery. The lights are on. There are visitors now. The work continues. Before this essay reaches its closing image, there is room for one more slow look at the show's broader thematic neighbours, because the way Marceline functions inside Adventure Time is part of a larger conversation that animation in the years surrounding the show's run was beginning to have with itself. Rebecca Sugar, who storyboarded Simon and Marcy, left Adventure Time to create Steven Universe, which premiered on Cartoon Network in 2013 and ran until 2019. Steven Universe is, in its own way, also a show about memory. The crystal gems are immortal beings who carry the weight of millennia of conflict and love and loss, and the show spends much of its run unpacking what those memories have done to them. Pearl, in particular, is a character whose entire emotional life is built around the memory of a person who is no longer present, and the structural similarities to Marceline are not accidental. Sugar took something she had been working on inside Adventure Time and gave it more space to breathe in the show she went on to make. The two shows are in conversation. The two characters, Marceline and Pearl, are spiritual cousins. Both of them are the asymmetric witness in different keys. Both of them are the long-lived being who has been left to remember the person they loved. This is part of the cultural footprint Adventure Time produced. The show created a vocabulary for thinking about long-lived beings and the work of memory that other shows then picked up and developed. Gravity Falls, created by Alex Hirsch, which ran from 2012 to 2016 on Disney Channel, picked up adjacent themes about secrets, family memory, and the weight of inherited knowledge. Regular Show, created by J.G. Quintel, which ran from 2010 to 2017, played with similar questions about long friendships and the things people carry forward across them. Adventure Time was not the only show doing this work. Adventure Time was, however, one of the earliest mainstream animated shows to take it this seriously, to commit to it across this many seasons, and to give a single character the kind of slow, patient, decade-long character development that Marceline received. The character was, in the larger context of animation history, a load-bearing experiment. The experiment worked. The character is now part of the standard reference set for how animation can write a long-lived being who has been asked to remember more than any one person should have to remember. There is also a small craft point worth sitting with about how the show handles the production side history of its own character. Pendleton Ward created Adventure Time. He stepped down as showrunner during the 5th season in a transition that was confirmed in a 2014 Rolling Stone interview. Adam Muto took over as showrunner. Across the transition, Marceline's character continued to develop without losing coherence. The writers and storyboard artists who handled her after Sugar's departure, including but not limited to Tom Herpich, Steve Wolfhard, and the rest of the show's writing room, preserved the architectural decisions that had been made about her in the earlier seasons. The bear remained the bear. Simon remained Simon. The mother, when she finally arrived in 2015, was added in a way consistent with what had been built before. This kind of cross-staff continuity on a long-running animated show is not automatic. It requires the writers to be in active dialogue with the existing record of the character, to remember what has been established and to refuse to contradict it. The show, in other words, was practicing the same archival discipline in its writing room that Marceline practices inside the world of the show. The two were mirrors of each other. The show treated its own continuity the way Marceline treats her museum. This is perhaps why the audience trusts Marceline as a character. The show, through the consistency of its own writing, has earned the right to be read as reliable. The promises the show made about her in Season 1 were kept by the writers in Season 10. The bear introduced in passing was followed up on. The Simon connection hinted at was paid off in full, was paid. The mother foreshadowed across years arrived, eventually, with the weight that years of foreshadowing earn. This is not a small achievement on a show with this many writers and this many seasons. This is the result of an active institutional commitment to remembering its own past. Marceline, in this light, is not just a character about memory. Marceline is the show's memory of itself, given a body and a guitar and an internal life. She is the show writing about how the show works. And so the closing image, the one this essay has been arriving at, is one the audience by now should be able to see in the dark. A small room lit by candles, a bass guitar leaning against a wall, a bear on a shelf, a tape player with a tape inside it, a window onto a quiet, moonlit world that is older than anyone watching can quite imagine. And a woman hovering slightly off the floor, paging through a notebook full of songs she has been writing for almost 1,000 years, while somewhere in the distance, on the other side of the kingdom, an old man hums the theme from a sitcom he no longer remembers having loved. That is the picture. That is the museum. That is the 1,000-year-old vampire, alone but not abandoned, performing the last and longest of all possible duties of love: to remember, to keep remembering, to not let what was given to her disappear without a witness. Marceline Abadir is the forgotten memories of every person and place she ever loved, made flesh, given a name, given a guitar, given 1,000 years. She is what is left when everything else is gone. She is the song the world used to know how to sing, sung by the only voice that still remembers how it goes. She is the curator. She is the archive. She is the lullaby her mother gave her, walking around inside a body, refusing to let everything she has ever cared about disappear. The bear sits on her shelf. The fries are in the song. The Cheers theme is in the woods. Simon is humming it without knowing what it is. Bubblegum is in the next room. The world is older than anyone in it remembers. Marceline remembers. She has been remembering since before the kingdom was built. She will keep remembering until the candle on the nightstand finally goes out, which, given who she is, will not be for a very long time. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next.